Minglaba and welcome to MI Radio's Myanmar Today. I am Aga Jo. Today we are reports on one new local transmitted patient is reported in Rakhine State. Real estate for foreigners available to rent at discount. Myanmar Railway strives to ensure smooth and secure flow of freight. And freight flow back to normal situation in August. All of that on this edition of Myanmar Today. But for now, let's take a look at what's happening in local news. The Ministry of Information is conducting the 5th course on research methodology, public relations and information management at the Max Hotel in Naypyidaw yesterday morning. Deputy Minister U Aung Hlathon made an opening remark on the course, saying which is essential for civil service staff at any level and department to have development knowledge. Amidst the increasing momentum of 4th Industrial Revolution or Industry 4.0 of digital technology, people have largely relied on online platforms for access to information, entertainment programs, and communications. A total of 604 Myanmar migrant workers arrived back home through Myanmar-Thai Friendship Bridge 2 of Myauri border town in Rakhine State yesterday. Rakhine State Little Representative U Tansin Aw and local officials helped the returnees with the medical tests and other supplies. A total of 65,637 young migrants have arrived back home through this route until now. The latest group of returnees included 363 males and 241 females from different regions and states. International remittance for Myanmar's gold exports and imports can be made by the only letter of credit LC, according to the notification released by the Trade Department and the Ministry of Commerce on the 12th of August. Myanmar is placed on the grey list by Financial Action Task Force, the intergovernmental body that sets anti-money laundering standards. Therefore, the country needs to monitor the gold and jewelry exports and imports to ensure there is no illegal income, according to the Trade Department. That's all with the local news. Now we'll move on to first report. One new locally transmitted case is reported in Rakhine State after a month without no local transmitted cases in the country. Earlier this week, the ministry has announced the gathering of the people. Less than 30 will be allowed on the 16th of August. Myanmar government also extended its 8-time restrictions until 31st of August to minimize the spread of the COVID-19 as it struggles to contain the infections from the returnees. Let's have a report for more. Pomo and Mimi Nyano have more.
One new locally transmitted case is reported in Rakhine State after a month without local transmission cases in the country. Earlier this week, the Ministry of Health and Sports has announced that the gathering of the people, not more than 30, will be allowed on 16 August. Myanmar government also extended its 8-time restrictions until 31st August to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 as it struggles to contain the infections from the returnees. The public and all those who are trying to prevent and control the disease could be cautious and mindful of the potential second wave of the virus. Comparing to the other countries, the first wave has not severely hit in Myanmar. The government also held the tabletop exercise for the COVID-19, which is a disaster preparedness activity that takes participants through the process of dealing with a simulated disaster scenario to prevent the second wave infections in the country. Dr. Tan Naiso, Director of the Health Knowledge Promotion Division from the Ministry of Health and Sports, spoke to MI Radio.
The newly reported one is from the Rakhine State, and we have seen some patients in Rakhine State in previous month among the returnees. Although COVID cases are mostly found among the returnees, we should also proceed with cautions. At first, MOHs allow gathering of more than 5 or 15 people, but now it is up to 30 people, especially intended for factories, restaurants, and film production. If we don't have restrictions, there may be a second wave of COVID-19. But if we restrict, there may be many impacts on education, business, and society. Russia has announced that it had developed a vaccine against the coronavirus, but in our country, many patients have already been discharged from the COVID-19 medical centers after the treatment. The lab tests are tested around between 1,000 and 2,000 per day.
Dr. Myanmar Today, Union Minister for the Ministry of Health and Sports, has warned that the people should be cautious that the second wave of the COVID-19 may be expected soon as the number of the COVID-19 cases spike and rise continuously. On August 15, he warned the people that the possible COVID-19 second wave outbreak could be bigger and could have more severe impacts on the country's development. U Min Aung, State Lotto representative from Dango Township in Rakhine State, spoke to MI Radio about the new locally transmitted case in the Rakhine State.
The new local transmission one is from the Sidri Township. When we tracked the patient's travel history, it is found out that he went to Jiaopu Township on 31st of July, so we put the family members under quarantine in the respective centers. In the previous days, we already found out the COVID-19 patients in Dango and Dandue Townships, but they all have recovered from the COVID-19 and have been discharged from the respective hospitals. The COVID-19 patients are under medical treatments at the relevant hospitals. The government also organized the COVID-19 Township Committee in every township. In Rakhine State, people are not very cautious about COVID-19, but we urge them to follow the rules and regulations. Some people are very poor, so that we deliver masks and some medical supplies to the poor.
Currently, Yangon region has the highest number of the COVID-19 patients with the number of 248, and Rakhine State is the second with 27 COVID-19 patients, and Chin State is the third with 15 patients. Ma Sandi Myomien, resident from North Oglaba Township of Yangon region, spoke to MI Radio.
In a township, many people are cautious about the infections. Everyone wears the mask when there are so many people in the market. The responsible person from our market committee always announced to wear the masks. We have a lot of impacts on the business from this pandemic, but the current situation is quite good and normal.
Around the world, 215 countries are suffering from the deadly coronavirus that has afflicted over 22 million people, including 777,000 fatalities and 14 million recoveries, according to the data from the Watermeter Coronavirus Center. In Myanmar, the number of the COVID-19 cases reaches 376 with 6 deaths and 331 recoveries, according to the data from the Ministry of Health and Sports at 8 a.m. on 18 August.
That's a report on one new locally transmitted patient reported in Rakhine State. Rentals for factories, offices, and workplaces, as well as accommodations, are the crucial business in Myanmar, along with the foreign investment coming into various business sectors in Myanmar, a developing country. After the outbreak of the global pandemic COVID-19, the foreigners who came to invest in the various business sectors in Myanmar and those who are in Myanmar with different reasons went back to their countries. For the reason, the real estate rentals dropped from 15 to 20% in normal prices. It was reported by Minton Okjin, Sueman, Jiteng, and Jenai Laoguan have more.
Rentals for factories, offices, and workplaces, as well as the accommodations, are the crucial business in Myanmar, along with the foreign investment coming into various business sectors in Myanmar, a developing country. After the outbreak of the global pandemic COVID-19, the foreigners who came to invest in the various business sectors in Myanmar and those who are in Myanmar with different reasons went back to their home countries. For that reason, the real estate rentals dropped from 15% to 20% in normal prices. In that case, the owners of apartments and real estate agencies, who aim mainly at the foreigners, had the hard times. But now the rentals for real estate at discount are becoming more, said U Dan U, Vice Chairman of Myanmar Real Estate Services Association.
The foreigners returning to their countries have not come yet. As they do not come back, the rentals related to them drop. So the real estate agents who depend on the foreigners have really hard time in their business. Therefore, they have to reduce rental prices. But it is not effective enough. For example, the remaining foreigners and foreigners working here who pay the rent with $900 per month can now pay only $750 a month. That is just an example, and we can also see this situation in condos as well as in housings. That causes the difficulty for the house owners and the businessmen. At the same time, the businessmen who depend on them are under the embarrassment.
အဲ့ဒီအနေထားကြတော့အင်ရှင်တွေပေါ့လုပ်ငန်းရှင်တွေအင်ရှင်တွေမှာလည်းနည်းနည်းအခက်အခဲဖြစ်တယ်တစ်ချိန်တည်းမှာပဲအဲ့ဒီဟာကိုအားပြုပြီးတော့မှလှုပ်ဆောင်တဲ့အကျိုးဆောင်တွေလည်းတတိကောင်းဖြစ်တယ်
There are rentals in different places with various prices, especially in Danlin Township of Yangon region, with rentals by most of the Korean and Japanese foreigners for business purpose. At present, some properties reduce their prices, and eventually the situation becomes domestic sales. It was said by U Kaung Tu Win, the founder of ShueProperty.com.
For the time being, there are so many effects on the rental business. The rents change in the sales. That is really visible in the market. Most of the situations are unpredictable. This means when will the airlines be available? But even if the airlines are reopened, are the investors from respective countries ready to come back? Or do they have confidence in coming back?
The rental market for the foreigner is still quiet, but the domestic rental market becomes to be active gradually after the realization of the health restrictions by the government, according to iMyanmarHouse.com, that is operating the real estate services. Une Mindu, managing director of iMyanmarHouse.com, also spoke to MI Radio.
အခုလောလောဆယ်ကတော့ကျွန်တော်အငှားစည်းကွက်ကိုကြည့်လိုက်မယ်ဆိုရင်ကျွန်တော်နိုင်ငံခြားသားတွေကိုငှားပေးတဲ့အငှားစည်းကွက်ဆိုတာရှိတယ်
For now, if we look at the rental market, there are rental services for the foreigners, and there is also the domestic rental market. We can say the foreign rental market is really cold. The main reason is that the international airlines have now been suspended, so there will be no foreigners coming into the country. Therefore, we can see the foreign rental market is really cooling down, but the domestic rental market is slowly recovering.
မရှိပါဘူးအဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ကျွန်တော်တို့နိုင်ငံခြားသားကိုငှားတဲ့ငှားစည်းကွက်ကတော့ကျွန်တော်တော်လေးအေးဆက်နေအောင်ကျွန်တော်တွေ့ရတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့လည်းပြည်တွင်းငှားစည်းကွက်ကတော့ကျွန်တော်တဖြည်းဖြည်းနဲ့ပြန်လည်ပြီးတော့လက်ပတ်နေတာကိုကျွန်တော်တွေ့ရပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာ
According to the policy of the government, the foreigners do not have the right to own the real estate in the country. Therefore, the foreign rental market is working, and most of the foreign investors rent the accommodation depending on their specified work timespan, said the Myanmar Real Estate Services Association.
That's a report on real estate for foreigners available to rent at discount. Myanmar Railways is stepping up measures to ensure smooth and secure flow of freight with the use of up and down trains despite the calm situation of COVID-19. Freight transport by train saves expenses with the purpose of ensuring continuous flow of commodities from one region to another. The MR is striving for better freight transport using a special up train from Yangon to Mandalay and a special down train from Mandalay to Yangon. It was reported by Zueman and Piede.
Myanmar Railways MR is stepping up measures to ensure the smooth and secure flow of freight with the use of up and down trains despite the calm situation of COVID-19. Freight transport by trains saves expenses. With the purpose of ensuring continuous flow of commodities from one region to another, the MR is striving for better freight transport using the special up train from Yangon to Mandalay and special down train from Mandalay to Yangon. U Tang Tai, Chief Station Master of Yangon Railway Station, also explained more.
The COVID-19 outbreak becomes slower in the country. In comparison with the situation before COVID-19, the passengers and income were in decline a little. Our priority is the continuous flow of the commodities. The number of the trains resuming operation is 2/3 of the total number currently. The MR is practicing social distancing in Yangon railway station and on the trains. The passengers have to buy 2 seats per person for ordinary class. In the upper class, single seat is sold and double seat is also sold. The passengers are in fewer numbers. Social distancing rule has to be practiced during the COVID-19 outbreak. The situation is not the same as that before the COVID-19 due to the occurrence of the COVID-19. The strength of the employees is not much in the work site. There are some delays found in our work.
When the freight is carried by highway passenger buses, they have to be placed under the floor of the vehicles, and the price is much higher. Carrying the goods by the trains saves the expenses, and the space of the train is wide. Freight service should rely on the rail transport, said the merchants. Rakhine State, a merchant, also shared her opinion.
I transport the freight from the Yangon to Yi. It is not possible for us to carry the freight by a charter car, and so it is carried by train. Our advantage is that the train carries the amount of commodity we want to carry. When the goods are carried by express bus, we have to be worried about the damage of the goods, and the transport charge it more than the train. Carrying the goods by a charter car is the best, but we can't afford to hire a car to carry the goods. That's why we carry the goods by train. The better the transport is, the more convenient we will become. We have now heard of upgrading railway line. We had to stop our business for a while because of the COVID-19. At the time, I had to gather the merchants to carry the commodity by car because I couldn't afford to hire a charter car. The good charge for the train is measured by weights. One weight costs 50 yards. The commodity is divided into dry and wet. Transport charge is much cheaper than the express bus.
At present, number 3 up train for Yangon Mandalay and express train for Yangon Molamyai attached with cargo coach are transporting the commodities. Moreover, special freight trains are transporting the commodity. Udang Tai also added more information.
Regarding the commodity, special train services have been planned during the COVID-19. There is also a special contract train service from Tilawa to Yeni and a special direct train service from Yangon to Mandalay as well. We have a total of 3,600 brake vans. The limit of freight weight is 3,600 tons. The goods have to be loaded up to the limited level. We have to supervise the loading of the freight. Now, our AMA is in the process of upgrading railroad sections. Once the railroad sections have been upgraded, commodities and passengers will be on the increase.
The EMA managed to transport 1.25 million visas worth of 61.295 million guests in February before COVID-19 outbreak. According to Yangon Railway's figures of July, the EMA managed to transport more than 1.16 million visas worth of more than 52.29 million guests.
That's a report on Myanmar Railway striving to ensure a smooth and secure flow of freight. As the number of the COVID-19 cases is on the increase, the flow of the domestic freight is back in the normal business in August. That is said by those who are close to the community of the commodity forwarding services. In the current situation, they have to carry out not to cut off the flow of the domestic commodities in the different places and the transportation system for the passengers and for the express buses. It was reported by Sueman and Jithing.
As the number of the COVID-19 cases is on the increase, the flow of the domestic freight is back in the normal business in August, said those who are close to the community of the commodity forwarding services. In the current situation, they have to carry out not to cut off the flow of their domestic commodities in the different places and transportation system for their passengers and for their express buses. Regarding the commodity forwarding service in the current situation, Go Nailin So, in charge of Man Shui Bi Express bus route at Aung Bus Gate, Yangon, which is running commodity forwarding services from Yangon to Mandalay and Lashu, spoke to MR Radio. He said,
There were fewer commodities at the time when the first COVID-19 cases were found, but now the businesses are in normal situation. But the passenger has to buy 2 seats for 1 person. But the flow and the transportation system for the commodities are back to normal. As the COVID-19 prevention is still in effect, there are no travelers in the season, and so we have to put more efforts in the transportations of the domestic commodities. We're still running our buses for the old customers. The customers also suffer as they have to buy 2 seats for 1 person according to the restricted rules from the Ministry of Health and Sports to prevent and control the spread of the COVID-19. The service charges in the transportation of the commodities are the same prices. As we put the commodities in the express, the number of goods doubled by comparing to the number of passengers. Sometimes the buses have to go only with the commodities without any passengers.
In Myanmar, the flow of the commodities and domestic goods were stopped in April and May as the number of the COVID-19 cases increased more. But in August, the transportation of the freight and commodities are back to normal situation, just like that before the COVID-19 period. However, during the COVID-19 period, some commodity forwarding services have started to run in a new platform by connecting with online shops so that the flow of the commodities can be set in a good situation, said Do Shui Zin Wu from Shui Zin Bus Ticket Service.
Even though it is the rainy season, the flow of the transport of the commodities, freight and goods are going on. As we also connected with some online shops, it can be said a good business, even though the COVID-19 affects the businesses. But we also had to temporarily stop our business when the COVID-19 infection cases were very high in the month of April and May. Then the business started to run normally in the month of June, July, and August. By comparing to May, August is in better situation even though it is the rainy season. As we know, the flow of the transportation, freight and goods are only good in the travel season.
In this COVID-19 period, it will be quick and reduce the cost by cooperating with the relevant ministry and businessmen in the association, said U Angmo, General Secretary from Myanmar Highway Freight Transportation, he said.
For me, I would like to see developments in the logistic company and even in the owners of the express buses. To improve, we have to follow the rules, the regulations and policy from the government steadily. In this way, we will see less harm in both businesses and we will have achieved more benefit and be more comfortable. The freight transportation is connected with the rice businessmen, bean businessmen and oil businessmen and even the agriculture sector too. We have to work with all the product sector. We have to transport them. If we do the transportation system to be good and cheap, we can have more achievements and benefits in both sides by cooperating and negotiating with the relevant ministry.
Right now, the freight, commodities and domestic goods transportation based on the Yangon region back in the normal status, and there is no delay in the trading, said the brokers in the market.
That's a report on freight flowing back to normal situation in August. That's all with the reports on Myanmar Today. Now let's move on to international news here on Myanmar Today. Thousands of students in Bangkok have taken to the streets calling for the government to step down and a new constitution to be drafted. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha has called for the authorities to remain calm and avoid violence at all costs.
It's become an almost daily occurrence. Student protests around Thailand calling for political reform. The movement has been gaining momentum and getting organised, attracting new faces to their cause. On Sunday, they returned to Democracy Monument to turn up the pressure. But over the past week, the government has been busy too. Several high-profile student leaders arrested and charged with offences from sedition to disturbing the peace. Others have been visited at home by the police and warned to stay away. But if they were hoping the students would stay at home, it didn't work.
The government has neglected our demands. They're trying to threaten our movement. But we won't stop fighting until our demands are met.
The students had come in numbers, thousands swarming through the streets of central Bangkok. As the protests have continued, others have joined their ranks. In the crowd, people held up signs stating their demands. They want a new constitution and the chance to elect politicians untainted by military rule. And new demands too. Reform of the monarchy is now being openly discussed, a dangerous topic in Thailand where criticising the throne comes with a hefty jail sentence. And these messages are tapping into a general vein of discontent.
I think they will definitely having more and more backing. And at the same time, there have been so many other people in this, in this country which has been affected by the management of the economy, of the politics in the past couple of years. Once they see that students have the popular support, I think more and more people would show up.
The police were keeping back, observing, but clearly aware that intervention would inflame the situation. But many expect a crackdown after the Prime Minister said the students' terms were unacceptable.
Well, it's quite a relaxed atmosphere, but the students and their supporters have shown they can come out in numbers, and they also maintain that they will not back down from their demands. And with daily protests now happening not just in Bangkok but around the country, the question is whether the government will concede to those demands.
And as evening turned to night, musicians sang protest songs from the stage as the audience waved the lights on their phones. It may not look like a political rally, but this is a movement gathering momentum, and it may soon be very hard to ignore. Tony Cheng, CGTN, Bangkok.
Southwest China's Sichuan province on Tuesday morning raised the emergency response for flood control to level 1, the highest rung in the 4-tier emergency response systems for floods, according to the local authorities. It marks the first time the province has launched the highest alert for floods, local media said. Floods beating historical records are expected along the Jingyi River, while heavy floods are expected to continue in the lower reaches of Dadu River and Min River. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said on Wednesday that he would be ready to hold new elections and hand over power after a constitutional referendum in an attempt to pacify mass protests and strikes that pose the biggest challenge to his political career, the RIA news agency reported. The new constitution may contain provisions for the redistribution of powers, according to the report. European Union leaders will hold emergency video talks on Wednesday on the crisis in Belarus, where protests are swelling against the disputed re-election of Lukashenko. And that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining me on Myanmar Today. I am Aga Jo. Have a great day, everyone. Stay home, stay safe. I'll see you again. Goodbye.